We are joined this evening with Republican Representative Tony Gonzales and Democrat Representative Henry Cuellar, who will make the urgent case for bipartisanship this Congress, particularly on the issues of immigration and border security. Welcome, Congressman Gonzales and Henry Cuellar.
First off, I represent Texas's 23rd district. It's 42% of the southern border. It stretches from San Antonio to El Paso. I've got cities like Uvalde. I've got cities like El Paso, Eagle Pass, Del Rio is in my district. I myself retired from the Navy after 20 years as a cryptologist. This is my second term. I got a lot to learn from Henry. He's been here a little longer than I have. This is my second term in Congress. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, very proud of that. And this year I'm on the Homeland Security Committee as well. But our districts are at the forefront of this border crisis. There is border security and immigration, to me, are two separate topics. You could be completely for a safe border that prevents bad actors from entering our country, fentanyl from killing our kids, people on the terrorist watch list, and you can be for an immigration system that welcomes those that want to come and live the American dream through the front door. I think you can accomplish both those things. Oftentimes, you hear people just talk about one or the other, or even worse, they blend the two together. So last night at the State of the Union, I want to focus less on what I disagree with the president on and more of what I think can go forward. One is the president and the White House, they always have their plans and their ideas. But in Congress, we have to remember, Congress is an equal branch of government. And we have an opportunity to roll up our sleeves and go to work, especially in a Congress that only has a 5-seat majority. But that starts by having a dialogue. And, little known fact, Henry and I grew up in the same town, Camp Wood, Texas, just past Uvalde, different times, but same little town. And so we share, his district is very similar to mine, predominantly Hispanic, a lot of the border. So we share a lot of these daily concerns. The other aspect of it is I want to talk about some of the things that we've already been doing, because this is important. Sitting on the Appropriations Committee, Henry and I have already worked on making sure that there's money for things like Stone Garden. These are grants that help our law enforcement. Oftentimes in these border communities, it's the sheriffs that are doing all the heavy lifting. And so we've made sure to maintain that funding via Stone Garden. Introduced a piece of legislation called the TAPS Act, which helps. Last year, there were 14 CBP agents that committed suicide. Absolutely saddening to see. Henry and I worked together to push that. Once again, through the Appropriations Committee, we were able to secure a little over $20 million to help with that effort. And there's a wide variety of things. I would say probably the biggest thing to me is we're in constant communication with one another. Yeah. I mean, you'll call me and say, hey, I was talking to my Border Patrol chief and he's saying this, or I'll call you and say, hey, I just had a meeting with fill in the blank, what do you think on this? So it's that level of collaboration that we're already doing, but that we need to do more. And before I turn over to Henry Cuellar, I would just add, he has been a great partner to work with. He understands it. Once again, our districts are very similar. We're at the forefront of this crisis. And we got to stop waiting for somebody else to save the day. Yeah. You and I are that somebody else. And No Labels is that organization that is focused on results, not rhetoric.
But, Tony and I are just dear friends, and I trust Tony. One of the things you got to do as members of Congress is trust. Have trust on members. If they give the word, then we're going to do that. And that's one thing about Tony. So he does his homework, and he's one individual that you trust with. And this is what No Labels is all about, trying to get people together, trying to find ways that we can work together, find areas of consensus, not differences, but areas. And that's why, what No Label does is so important to us. So I want to certainly thank the No Labels organization for what they do. One of the things Tony said is what I read many years ago when President LBJ from Texas said, I'm an American, I'm a Texan, and then I'm a Democrat in that order. And it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. I think anybody that puts party before country is really doing a disservice to the country. And that's what Tony and I focus on, what's good for the country. Tony, talked about some of the things we've been working in common. At the border, we're looking at a different way of life. Yes, we have migration issues. Yes, we understand what's happening at the border, but we got to understand, like Tony said, immigration is one thing, security is another thing, intertwined, but got to make sure we understand. When you look at the border is a beautiful place. It really, really is.
Yes,
I'm from Laredo, Texas, the largest inland port. We get 17,000 trailers a day.
Wow.
Trade. We get 25, 26 trains a day. So those are important for commerce. But we also get about 150 or more buses a day. Those are Mexicans that are coming over to spend money. So we got to find that balance. And this is what Tony and I have been looking at doing. Look, as Tony said, the president said some things that we agree on. We got to make sure that we put more money in technology, more money in personnel. When you talk about Border Patrol, we're about 2,000 Border Patrol agents. And the Border Patrol agents are exhausted. They've been at the very front. And we know this because Tony spends a lot of time with the Border Patrol. I spend a lot of time with Border Patrol. Border security is one of those issues that we can find a lot of areas to work together. But when we talk about border security, who has an input? Besides the president or the executive branch and Congress, there's several groups out there. Yes, we listen to immigration activists, but they're not the only area. Who's listening to the men and women in green and blue? And that's something that Tony and I spend a lot of time talking to the men and women in green and blue, but also who's listening to the border communities. And that's one thing that Tony has border communities. I have border communities where we spend time. Now, the other thing I'll close with this, and then we'll have an interaction, is that when you talk about border security, it is very, very, very important that we don't play defense on the 1 yard line. Everybody talks about the 1 yard line. That's the US-Mexico border. But we ought to play defense on the 20-yard line. And that is getting Mexico, Central America, other countries involved in doing their job. At one time, Mexico was actually stopping more people than the US Border Patrol. I had to double check that. I said, let me look at that. That was about 6, 7, 8 years ago. And it's one of the things that it's important. And as you know, first it was Mexicans, and then you had Central Americans, and now what do we have? The world coming in, name the country, and they're coming into the southern border. So we have to make sure that we understand that when they come into the border, they don't, a lot of times it's the criminal organizations that decide where they go. They dictate where they go, and they control, because at one time they were coming in through Yuma, Arizona. Then they came to the Rio Grande Valley. Then went Eagle Pass Del Rio. And then they went over to El Paso. So the criminal organizations control where the people come in.
Henry, I want to share a story. I want to share a story that has stayed with me because I think it's very powerful for the audience. And one, thank you, No Labels, for helping put members together and solve hard problems. Immigration and border security is a problem that every president has had to deal with. This isn't an easy topic. Henry and I certainly live it every day, but it's that level of discussion. But I want to share a story. I spent 20 years in the military. Oftentimes, I can't tell you how many Christmases I spent abroad. And last Christmas, it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and there was already over 100 migrants there. And I'll never forget it. There was a Border Patrol agent. You look at his face, and the man's shift had just started, and he was exhausted. You could already tell. It's Christmas Day. He is absolutely exhausted. He's asking, "Where's everyone from?" He's going through the steps of the initial apprehension, and then I see, in the same lens, I see a young woman. She's in her maybe mid-20s, and she's got a 4 or 5 year old little boy with her, and that little boy is holding his mother's hand as tight as can be. And all I can think of is, what kind of journey had they been on? One. Two, I guarantee you that little boy had no idea it was Christmas Day. They just happened to be in Del Rio on Christmas Day. And I saw that and I go, both of this is completely wrong. Here you have a border patrol agent that is no longer being able to catch bad guys, fentanyl terrorists, and Republicans and Democrats can roll up our sleeves and go to work. And I'll just turn it over to you for kind of the final words.
Border security doesn't stop and say,
Yeah.
hey, we're taking off because it's a holiday. They are out there. So while we're out there enjoying the time with their families, they're out there by themselves, and many times very difficult situations, as Tony mentioned on that. So again, when we talk about border security, it's got to be balanced. Right now, we got over 2 million final deportation orders. 2 million final deportation orders of people that technically under the law are not supposed to be here. So we got to find a better way. And this is why we want to work together, Tony and I and other folks. And I'm now the new ranking member for Homeland Approach. So I look forward to working with Tony.
All right. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. No labels. Thank you so much.